Well, welcome everyone. Very excited for my very first live Q&A without Mark on my own, and I just really want to thank you for being here today and welcome you. This is my very first Q&A, as I mentioned, and I might have some technical issues, so just thank you in advance for your patience in today's live Q&A. So the way we're actually going to proceed going forward is going to be a little bit different. So we're actually going to take a few questions from this video and we're going to answer them in the next video. And then we're going to talk about a few trends that are happening right now in immigration law. And then we're going to actually answer some live Q&A. So probably in about 10 or 15 minutes, we're going to start getting those questions in there. I do want to test right now. I see some people are joining us. I just want to test this out, see if it works. Burvinder Singh says, hi, fantastic to have you. Thanks for joining me. Mir Raham as well, hello, how are you? Miriam, hi Cedric, hi Miriam, how are you? And we have Elida as well. So nice to have you all joining me. I'm glad this is working out so far. It seems to be working. So let's get right to it. So, what I have for you today is I did want to talk about three things. The current rounds of invitation for Express Entry, how to improve your score for Express Entry, and postgraduate work permits. And before we do this, very quickly, I just want to talk about the goal of this. The goal of this live Q&A is really for individuals that are abroad. So I am actually teleworking abroad right now, and I do spend quite a bit of time teleworking abroad because my partner is abroad. So right now it's 4 a.m. in Toronto, it's 9 a.m. in London, and it's a very early live Q&A, but it's really for those who are abroad who want to immigrate to Canada. It's great timing for those in Europe, in Africa, in Asia. This allows you to join, take a break to join me in the morning, or even in the early evening to speak with me. All right. Very quickly as well, if you'd like to speak with me, we do have, this is our law firm, Hoffel Immigration Law. You can go over here to speak to a lawyer. We have Alicia, we have Chanel, and I am at the bottom here. And you can see right here the time zone that I'm currently at. I frequently telework abroad. I am on a VPN. Our client information is actually securely held in North America, and you can click here for a consult. I believe right now there's some availability for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So there we have it. All right, let's get right to it about what I want to talk about today, and that is our very first thing, which is the express entry rounds of invitation. So here we have it. And as you may know, there was a recent round of invitation where the score was 542. They took 1,750 individuals. And we can see here, actually, if we scroll down, the amount of individuals that have a score of over 500. So there's 9,000 individuals. And we can look here at the other candidates with their individual scores. So the question you might be asking yourself is, what does this mean, right? All right, so if we take 1,750 individuals every 2 or 3 weeks, and you have 9,000 individuals with a score of about 500 or more, we expect the CRS score to remain at above 500 for the next 6 months or so. Now, this is just based on past performances, and it's just a guess. It's no guarantee, right? They could very easily stop the express entry rounds of invitation, or they could also increase the amount of applicants that they take. And this would substantially lower the CRS score, and you might be called for an invitation to apply much earlier than expected. If we take a look at here at the express entry, the previous rounds of invitation, and we scroll to the bottom, we know that during COVID it was quite high. But if we go to pre-COVID, we can see that the CRS score was about 470, was usually around the lowest score for a CRS. In other words, you might be asking yourself, when is the CRS score going to lower to this 470? again. So it's really hard to tell, right? We don't know what's going to happen with rounds of invitation. We don't know what's going to happen with the amount of people that they take. However, if we look here, we can see that individuals with a score of 470 or above is really high. We're dealing with at least, here we have, let's say 19,000. We have another 9,000, let's say. So we're already up at 27,000. And then here we're going to add another 5,000 and this 10,000 and 500. So assuming we continue the rounds of invitation at 1,700, or even if we were to go back and before COVID they were taking a few more invitations to 3,000, you're still looking at probably anywhere from 6 months, a year and a half, and 2 years. Again, this is just based on past performances, and it's a guess based on what is happening before. Obviously, at any time, things can change. They can take more candidates, the CRS score can lower. You might also have been hearing about occupation-specific draws, location-specific draws, and so this is going to be coming in the near future, where they're going to be able to select individuals regardless of their CRS score. So it's quite exciting. And they're going to, so in other words, if they're looking for, all physicians in a certain province, they could easily just accept them all regardless of the CRS score. So this is why you want to have an express entry profile right now, is because while you think that it might take, a year or 2 years to get the for the CRS score to lower until you qualify, there is a small chance that you get called on an occupation or location specific draw. All right, so this is what I want to talk about. So just to summarize, I think that the CRS score is going to remain above 500 for at least the next 6 months, and we do expect this to go back to pre-COVID levels in the next anywhere from a year to 2 years. And the minister did announce that they're going to be processing more express entry, right? They're going to be they're going to process the express entry applications within 6 months, which is going back to pre-COVID levels by the end of the year. So fingers crossed, it's all going to work out. All right. The second thing I want to talk about is how to improve your CRS score. So I think it's very helpful for us to look at the ministerial instructions. And in here, we find all the legalese to how to improve your score. All right, so these are the rules, ministerial instructions, and here they talk about, how to get your additional points. It talks about all the rules regarding express entry. You can see the human capital factor scores, get a maximum of 500. If you have a partner, if you have a spouse, you would get a maximum of 460. So 40 points go to your spouse, and then you can and then you can get them back through work experience and education. Here we see all the age points. You might be wondering how many points you get for your age. Here we go. Here's the magic number. We've talked about this with Mark. 20 to 29, you get 110 points. And as you get older, the points actually drop. If you have a spouse, you get less points for your age. You can see here, if you have a spouse, say you're 35 years old, you're only going to get 70 points, whereas if you were single, you would get 77. So here we have all the rules for express entry. And what I'm interested in is, you might be asking yourself, how do I improve my CRS score? So I'm going to focus on federal skilled workers. So I'm going to focus on individuals who are abroad and want to come to Canada, but they have too low of a score, right? That's the goal of today's live Q&A, is for individuals who are abroad. So the first thing I want to be looking at is qualifying offer of employment, and this brings us qualifying offer of arranged employment, and this brings us to section 29.2 of the ministerial instructions. So here we have, if the offer is supported by a valid assessment, which is a labor market impact assessment, LMIA, you would be able to qualify for a qualifying offer of employment, and we'll see here at the very bottom the amount of points you can get, and there's different points for this qualifying offer of employment. So it's actually at the top here. It's 50 points if it's going to be in a NOC. It usually has to be in a NOC A or B, or if you go with the double O major group, you would get 200 points. So the question is, how do you get an LMIA? And an LMIA is employer driven. Your employer has to make an application to the Department of Employment and Social Development Canada to request an LMIA, and they need to prove that there's no permanent resident or Canadian that can do the work. So the question is, how do you find a job with an LMIA? Well, just to let you know, it's illegal to pay for an LMIA. You can't pay your employer for an LMIA. You can't accept part of the wages for LMIA. So we're going to be looking at the job bank. So you can look at the um, job bank Canada. Here we go. Um, and you could find different jobs, and here you'd be looking. So right now there's over 90,000 positions in Canada being advertised. You might also be contacting employers, looking at different websites to look for jobs within LMIA. Most of the time you have to have experience in the job. You have to prove that you can actually do this job, and so that's going to be quite important. All right. Second thing you're going to, and in some cases you can be LMIA exempt. So French nationals, for example, would be LMIA exempt to work in Canada under mobilité francophone. However, there's certain conditions that must be met to get additional points for your offer of employment. In particular, you have to accumulate at least 1 year of full-time work experience. Um, all right, so get a labor market impact assessment, and we talked quickly about French, and this brings us to our next point. If you have good skills in French, it would be quite important to try to get your additional points for French language proficiency. So here we have it. If you have 25 points, if it's assessed at a 7 or higher, and then you can get up to another 25 points in some cases. You can get up to 50 points for speaking French, which is if you have a certain level of French, which is excellent. And this could really be the difference between, if you have a score of 420 and you have your points for French, getting a 470, and you have your LMIA, then you could get an extra additional 50 points, bringing you up to 520, and this could be the difference between an invitation to apply, let's say in 6 months, and or possibly in 6 months, or just not qualifying for express entry at all. All right, so we have the LMIA, we have French, and after the next thing we have is called transferability factors. So this is really interesting, and as you can see here, you can get a max of 100 points for transferability factors. Now, what is points for skill transferability factors? So if you have a certain amount if your language score is actually at a certain level, first official language assessed in 7, with one or more assessed at least of a 9, right? So here we're talking about a bilingual candidate, you speak French or English, or in some cases, if you just have one language that's assessed at a CLB 9, you're able to get your 25 points. If you have a post-secondary program credential of 1 year or more and proficiency at a CLB level 9. So if you're at a CLB level 8 or 8.5, try really hard to get your 9, study up, do your language test, and get these additional points. In some cases, you can get up to 50 points for your transferability skill factor. So here we're talking about, CLB level 9, CLB level 9, and you have 2 or more post-secondary program credentials, or you have a university level credential at a master's level or level to entry to practice professional degree for occupation for a NOC A, which is licensed. So in some cases, also doctorate level. So some cases you can actually get your extra 50 points. It's usually going to be if you get a CLB 9. As you can see, it's really an important factor. So if you have less than a 9, study up on your language, try to get these extra points for skill transferability factor. And again, we're just focusing on federal skilled workers, people outside Canada. Lastly, we talk about education points. We can see that you can actually get more points depending on the level of education you have. I'm just trying to pull it up to allow you to see at the same time here. So you get your points are assigned for the highest level of post-secondary education obtained, and you can see here. Oh, sorry, we're still under the skill transferability. There we go. So here you can see if a foreign national has. So here you would need a Canadian ECA, educational credential equivalency. You just get this assessed before you create your express entry pool. And then you get your educations assessed before you create your Express Entry profile. And if you're missing some points because you only have a 1 or 2 year program, you could be looking to getting further education in your country of nationality to get additional CRS points. So 2 things I want to talk about. So if you're abroad and if you're outside of Canada right now and you have a Express Entry profile and you'd like to speak to me about how to get more points, whether through develop a plan together for you to increase your CRS score, go onto our website, scroll down here, and you can book a 25-minute consult. We're really busy with Express Entry, and we have quite a bit of experience as well with helping our clients properly prepare Express Entry profiles and invitations to apply, replying to those as well. So don't hesitate, reach out to me. I'd love to help you. All right, so this would bring us, so as I mentioned before, this is really for individuals abroad. We're going to take 5 questions from previous videos. So after the video, feel free to drop questions. We're going to take them on to our next video. Since the very first one, we don't have 5 questions right now, so we're going to skip that. The second part of my live Q&As is really to talk about trends and what's happening in immigration law. So I know a lot of people right now are looking at Express Entry. I hope this was helpful in terms of the CRS score and how to improve it. Now the third part, which brings us to right now, is going to be live Q&As. So let's slide back to our main scene here. Get properly hydrated and let's get going. All right. So I actually haven't taken a look at any of these, so let's take a quick look. All right, so we're going to answer this very first question. It's by Maria, and she's asking if a few months were spent in home country while residing in another during studies abroad, working on thesis, should those months be considered as address history or travel history as it's long? Yeah, so this is a great question. You were I would definitely disclose them. There's going to be a part when you receive your invitation to apply and you're preparing your permanent residency application where you're going to have to disclose your travel history. So even if it was for a short period of time, and I know it's very annoying, but do your best to complete it. What I'd actually recommend is if you don't know exactly when you left, when you came back, you did it so frequently, but you have a vague understanding, I would actually provide also a letter of explanation and say, for this question, please take note that I was commuting frequently. I may have forgotten some dates. I verified my passports to the best of my abilities. Here are the dates that I traveled from one country to another. In terms of address history, it's going to be the address where you lived. So I don't know. You see, while residing in another country. So if you did reside in another country or even another address, it's going to have to be disclosed in the address history. And here I'm assuming we're talking about at the invitation to apply stage when you're finalizing your PR, your electronic application for permanent residency. So it's long. Attach a second piece of paper. Have an explanation as to why there's so many changes of addresses. If you don't know exactly when you moved or when you lived in the country or whatnot, check your leases, check your passports, check bank statements. If you're still not sure, you can provide a letter of explanation to explain that. But yes, and it's going to go back to 10 years. In some cases, we advise our clients to go back to the age of 18 because sometimes this is requested by immigration officers and it may save you time. So absolutely, even if it's just a few months residing in another country, it should be disclosed in your address history and your travel history, and do your best to do that. All right, what else? What other questions do we have? Um, for Denvir, great question. So you ask, hi, I'm working as an HR executive in India. From last 1 year, my job responsibility matches with HR coordinator in Canada, but the title doesn't match. Is I eligible for Express Entry? So when we're talking about NOCOs, let's just go over this very, very briefly. The Whether or not your title matches word for word is not going to be the determining factor for the NOC. It's obviously, it'd be great if it did, but it's not required. So let's talk more about this. So um, Sorry, I'm just opening up this other page here. Great, so let's flip over here to find your knock, and let's look for HR resource manager. Again, I don't know all the details of your case, and if you want to speak more in detail about your knock, please book a consultation with me. At this case, we're just doing a hypothetical scenario, just legal information on what we're looking at. Oops, sorry, we did side. So there we go. Let's take a look at this knock. So here we go. So here we have a knock, and how do we assess the knock? So this is going to be the knock code, and this is going to be the knock title, and this is what we call the lead statement. So you're going to see on a lot of IRCC web pages, it's going to talk about, the lead statement. Well, it doesn't actually tell you what it is, but this is the lead statement. So your job as HR manager in India, or HR executive, should fit into this lead statement to the best, to like very closely to this lead statement. These are examples, right? So you, for example, your title might be HR resource executive, HR resource manager, various titles. Again, these are examples. But this is what interests us. The lead statement, right? It has to be, you have to prove to the officer in your EAPR, in your electronic application for permanent residence, that your job matches the lead statement, and then you have to prove that you fulfill the main duties. Do you have to fulfill each one of these main duties? No, you don't. But you should fulfill at least 75% or more. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 75%. You can't fulfill 7.5 here, so let's go on the safe side and say 8. You should at least be prepared to fulfill these 8 main duties. Now you might ask yourself more like, how do I actually prove that I have this experience, right? So try to get a letter of reference from your current employer. Try to get pay stubs to show what you've been doing. Try to get a contract which details your duties. There's very specific requirements and sometimes. And what you can actually do is actually break this up into a Word document and say, look, here's how I meet the main duty. Here's the lead statement, right? I have a letter, here's the lead statement, and here's the evidence in support of the lead statement. I have a letter of reference, this is what it proves. I have my contract with the job, here's my main duties, here's what I've been doing, here's examples of how I've been fulfilling this main duty. And then on the letter, you can actually have, each one of these can be a subtitle, and you're going to explain clearly how you meet the knock and clearly how you have evidence. And this is going to avoid issues where you submit your EAPR and then it gets rejected because there's no evidence, for example, that you oversaw the classification and rating of occupations, right? So I would clearly set out, very easy. The idea is we want to make this as easy for the officer to review the main duties and to say, yeah, you know what, he has this experience. It does match the knock. Fantastic. I have verified, this. I have verified this. It's well supported. If you don't meet the knock, right? If you can't prove that you have the knock, they're going to remove your CRS points. And if you fall under the minimum CRS score, or if you become ineligible, because as you know, the federal skilled workers, you have to have a minimum work experience, right? If you become ineligible because of this, or if your CRS score goes below the cutoff, you could find yourself in a situation where your EAPR gets rejected. All right, let's take a quick sip of water. Let's go back to the main screen here. Let's take a quick sip of water and continue. Hydration is important. All right. Let's take a look here. And Anifa says, very good morning, Cedric. Well, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining me. For all those who are abroad right now, 4 a.m. in Toronto, 9 a.m. in London, welcome. Very excited to have you here. All right. Ahish, good morning to you too. After the AOR, I made my spouse as non-accompanied to Canada and raised a web form after the AOR mentioning spouse while not accompanying. Received biometric requests for both of us. what should I do now? It's a great question. So let's talk about, this comes back to something called immigration examination. And we've had a lot of clients with this. Um, so I think it's great that if we touch base on this. So let me just try to find the proper IRCC page here. All right, so here we have it. Let's switch back to the screen share. All right, so here on the page talking about assessment of applications for overseas dependents. All right, and why are we talking about this? So if we just go back to your question, um, sorry, very first podcast on my own. So I just want to thank you for your patience here. There we go. Here's your question. Let's pull this up. There we go. All right, so here we have it. Let's take a look. So here's a general idea. When you're doing an application for permanent residency, you need to list all your dependents, whether or not they're going to be accompanying you. So here we're talking about dependents, and this is defined in the law and whatnot. Spouse or common law partner and dependent children, right? There's a certain age cutoff for dependent children. We can take a look at that very quickly. And there's going to be also a lock-in age. So lock-in age is when they receive your applications, the age of the minor child is going to lock in at 22 years of age if they don't have a spouse or common law partner. So regardless how long it takes to process, you're locked in. But again, the rules can be quite could be quite lengthy. So again, if you're in this situation, you want to talk about lock-in age, book a consult with me. All right. So here we are talking about spouse or common law partner, dependent children. So on the application, they have to be listed, whether or not they're accompanying you. This is really, really, really important. So here we go. All applicants and family members, whether accompanying you or not, must complete an immigration medical examination. So this is why you are receiving this letter. So when you declare an applicant, a dependent, spouse, common law, doesn't you have, so sorry, let's just take a step back here. When we submit a permanent resident application or other applications at IRCC, they might ask you for your spouse, common law partner, dependent children. You must declare them. If you don't declare them right now, the law says that you're not going to be able to get PR status in Canada. So it's super serious. If you've for example, you come to Canada and you don't put your spouse or partner in your PR application and you get accepted, it's super serious, and that was not the right thing to do. In your case, great, you have declared them to immigration authorities. They're included in your forms, and now you listed them as non-accompanying. They still have to do a medical examination, and they're still going to have to go through a security check as well, regardless of not if they're accompanying you or not. And this is clearly indicated here. So the reason why is because if you have an inadmissible family member, you can be inadmissible yourself, right? So here we go. It explains clearly here. In here, right, failure to undergo or pass a medical examination may result in refusal of your application. Medical inadmissibility of family member may render the principal applicant in Canada inadmissible. So super serious. So in your case, Mahish, um, you're going to receive a biometric request for both of you guys. Um, oh, sorry, I misunderstood your question. I thought it was a medical examination. In any event, you can send another wet form. Sorry, the headset just turned off. You send another web form, but really they have to do this biometrics. They have to do their medical examination, as they have to be examined by immigration officers, regardless or not if they're accompanying you or not. All right, all right, Zarebel, nice to see you. I have a CRS score of 478. What are my chances of an IT this year? I did cover it earlier in the video, so scroll back if you'd like to know more about the different scores. As we've talked about, I really think that the CRS score is going to come back to a pre-COVID level of minimum 470 in probably a year or two. So those are your chances, but we did talk about occupation-specific draws, right? You could having your name in the pool. There's a slight possibility that you get called based on your occupation, but right now, the chances you get called this year, in there's only July 26th. There's what 5 months left, are not really good. But listen, you never know. You never know, right? We saw, and this is just based on past invitations to apply. We saw that the last one not too long ago was 547. So there you have it. All right. Bin, you said, is it okay to apply for a closed work permit? And when the temporary open work permit comes, can I reapply for the open work permit and cancel the closed permit application? I don't think I understand. Um, a little bit hard to provide legal information. In this case, it looks like you have an LMIA work permit application pending, and that you're somehow going to get a temporary open work permit because you're going to be in Canada and applying for the work permit. Um, Sorry, it's hard to provide legal information. The question is a little bit. I don't know more about your situation. If you're inside Canada, if you're outside Canada, I don't know how you plan to apply for the temporary open work permit. Um, so I'd recommend you maybe might book a consultation with me. We can look at your situation, explore the work permits. This being said, generally speaking, some cases, like, I really can't answer this question. I'm sorry, Bin. All right, Axel, he asks, I studied and worked in France, but my wife is in Algeria, home country, and she's the principal applicant. Should we add some LOE about a relationship? We have a joint account for POF. Merci beaucoup, Cédric. Um, my wife, so you guys are married, home country Algeria. Should we add some letter of explanation about a relationship? Um, so we're missing a little bit of information here, like how long you've been married. Why you're in France right now? Is it because you're working in France? Have you already lived together? And we have a joint bank account. It's good. So you have to, when you declare dependence, you do a spousal, and in these cases, you have to demonstrate that you're in a genuine relationship, not for immigration purposes. So I would, if you can add a letter of explanation to explain why you're in France and why she's not able to join you, or vice versa, explain why you're not in Algeria, whether it's for work and whatnot. It would definitely would definitely help to demonstrate that you're in a genuine relationship. And I think what's again, it really depends on the type of immigration application you're making. It depends on a lot of personal factors. But yeah, generally speaking, have a letter of explanation to explain what's going on is going to be a great idea. So I'll leave it at that, Axel. Sorry I can't be more precise. If you want to speak about your situation, if you want me to write the letter of explanation, we have a lot of expertise doing that. I actually have a few clients right now dealing with common law situations where we have to provide a lot of evidence and letters of explanation. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Just generally speaking, like letters of explanation are great to, right? We want to make it as easy as possible for immigration officers to look at the application, understand what's going on, have the supporting documents, right? So if you said you're in France because of work, right, have your contract of employment, right? If for whatever reason your wife can't come to France, demonstrate the applications for visas. If you don't any, or explain why, whether it's family in Algeria and whatnot. But letters of explanation, big thumbs up if they're succinct and they're followed up with supporting documents. They're generally good ideas to explain what's going on in your application file. As we all know, web forms are taking a very long time right now to process. Fantastic. All right, moving on. Hello, how are you, Harpreet? Hello again. This time no L. Please answer. What was your question? I don't see your question. Oh, there it is. My study permit application. Can expect decision. Are IRCC skipping files? Listen, let's. I'm not aware of IRCC skipping files. They have, as you may know, there's a news article recently how IRCC's backlog is something like 2.4 million applications behind. So they're really, really far behind in processing applications. They're extremely busy. It's taking a lot of time to process applications. All right, let's skip over here. Let's take a quick look. All right, so we can check the processing times. So we can go down here to temporary residence, and we can take a look here at from outside Canada, and after here we go 12 weeks. Now this is not a good indicator since it's not region specific. I don't know where you're from, and unfortunately IRCC doesn't tell you for the visa, for different visa application centers. The new school term is starting up in about a few weeks, right? In the end of August, a lot of schools are restarting, so I'm sure they're very busy with this. Depends also how long your study permit application has been pending. Is the delay? Are you responsible for the delay? Are they waiting for documents? Have you submitted a web form? These are all factors that can take more time to process the application. If your application is seriously delayed, uh, here we're talking about anywhere from like 6 months for a study permit, or and you think that it's really unreasonable, you're able to do an application for writ of mandamus to the federal court, and this is like a formal litigation that you'd be doing, and you're seeking an order from a judge to force IRCC to make a decision on your application. But really, we're dealing with, it's an exceptional circumstances. We're dealing with long delays. Unfortunately, if you're within this 12 weeks, or even a little bit longer, let's say 16 or 20 weeks, unfortunately, and you've sent everything to IRCC, you've updated your address, there's not waiting for you. Unfortunately, you just got to keep waiting. But you have that remedy that if you're talking about 6 months or a year or 2 years for a study permit, you're still waiting, reach out to me. We can discuss whether a mandamus application is right for you. All right, moving along. Let's see other questions here. What is a valid job offer for CEC to claim CRS points? So really the focus is for individuals outside Canada. Anitha, in any event, let's answer this question. I think we touched upon it previously. We talked about qualifying offers of arranged employment, and so we're talking about a labor market impact assessment (LMIA) from your employer that proves there's no PR or Canadian citizen available to do the work. And it's employer driven, so speak to your employer about it. Look for a job offer from your employer. We talked about some cases if you have an open work permit, if you have an open work permit, if you're LMIA exempt, some cases you can get points, but again, it's very specific. And listen, let's talk about it in more detail. Job offers, express entry. Let's talk about this. All right, so here we have it. Sorry, it's the wrong page. Sorry, just one moment. All right, so let's talk about LMIA exemption job offers. So you either get an LMIA, as we've talked about, employer driven, talk to your employer about it, look for another job with the LMIA, or in some cases, you're if there's no LMIA, for example, you're on a postgraduate work permit, here's the conditions that you must fulfill for the points for express entry. Now, a lot of the postgraduate work permits are going to fail on this very first point, right? You're the employer on your work permit, right? So it has to be on your work permit. So if you have an open work permit and your employer is not on your work permit, you don't qualify. You cannot get the points. If it is, so for example, mobilité francophone, or if you have a work permit through LMI exemption with your employer on it, you need to have a valid job offer. And here it talks about what is a valid job offer. So there's various requirements, right? It's very specific, right? You need to follow these. Read this super carefully. Talk to your employer about it, right? We see applications getting rejected because of this. All right, and the second and last thing is to continue to have an LMI exemption, right? So international agreement and whatnot. So here we talk international agreement, and this is where we talk about mobilité francophone, um, different investors, categories, Canadian interest, significant benefit, and here we're talking about, there we go, mobilité francophone. So CEC, postgrad work permit, you're most likely not going to qualify because of this. Again, the employer needs to be on your work permit. If you're LMI exempt, you need to at least work 1 year, have the job offer, continue to have the LMI exemption, and then meet one of these categories down here. So it's quite difficult for a lot of people to get these additional points. There we have it. All right, let's take. Oh, sorry. Yeah, there we go. Payal had the answer to the question the whole time. We could have just referred to him or her. Fantastic work. And yeah, and this is an interesting question that came up recently, right? With a client of mine, if you have a valid job offer, you have to have the intention to actually work, right? If you have the LMI exempt, you can't have a valid work permit. Well, in theory, you can't have a valid work permit if you don't have the intention to work, right? You can't, for example, get your valid work permit and then leave and never work the job and try to claim the points. We go back to the ministerial directives. In some cases, they can actually remove the points. In any event, there's no obligation for you to currently be in Canada, residing in Canada, and continuously working. However, you can't have a work permit if you don't, have the intention to actually work, and you can't have a job offer, right? If you don't accept a job offer, if you don't have the intention to actually to work as well. This would require you to be physically in Canada. All right, let's move along here. All right, Ria says, I'm a non-accompanied spouse. My wife just received confirmation of permanent residence and traveling to Canada soon. I want to start my spousal sponsorship as soon as she arrives in Canada. Does stamped cop work as PR card? No, it does not. So confirmation of PR, if you read it very carefully, you'll see that you have to go. Your partner is going to receive, your wife is going to receive a permanent residency once she gets to Canada, right? So once she gets to Canada, if you read the letter very carefully, it's at the border crossing that it's going to be signed, it's going to be witnessed, and it's going to be issued. And then, correct, you do have to make a PR card application. However, when your wife's in Canada and she enters Canada and she gets her signed confirmation of PR, this may be, in some cases, it may be good enough to actually start. Like your wife's gonna have the PR status, and then you can start with the spousal application. However, there's many factors in play here. We're talking about for spousal applications, right? We're talking about how long is the relationship? Is the relationship for immigration purposes? Where you were declared as a non-accompanying spouse? Fantastic. Were you medically examined? Did you do your biometrics as well? All these questions are going to be a factor into whether or not your spousal application should be made right now, right? For example, do you have to wait a year or two to further develop your relationship, to further further develop your relationship with your partner, or is this a case where you've been married for 5 years, you have kids and whatnot? So, anyways, spousal application, we have experience with this as well. Do not hesitate if you'd like to speak to us. Again, this is our law firm, Hawful Immigration Law. You can book a consult with us. We also have blogs that we write, which is a fantastic resource. You can see up here. So most recently, we talked about how to choose your educational credential equivalency organization. So here we have it. It talks about the different factors and what you would do. We also have our DYI video courses. So, and these courses, they're created by Mark, and it's really targeting DYI individuals, people who want to do their own immigration application, but they want to know more about the process. They want to do it correctly, right? They want to take a masterclass session. They want to learn how to do their PR applications, their express entry course and whatnot. You can see here right now that we have an express entry course coming up. You can see at the bottom everything that we do in terms of the PR course. You can see here at the bottom all the courses, how to complete the eligibility section, personal details, police certificates, proof of funds, you name it. We cover it in over 642 minutes of video. So lots of resources. Our target clients that we're looking for are DIY clients. We have the blogs, we do these live Q&As, we have these courses, we can learn more about it. And also, if you'd like to speak to us about what is the best immigration pathway, how can you improve your CRS score, is now the right time to do a spousal application, we're here to help. We're here to speak with you. And then, if you wish, we're also here to help you. So we do have our collaborative review um, approach to helping with clients. So this means that we do a consult and we look at what's the best path to come to Canada as a PR resident, right? Or to for a study permit, or whether it's waiting until you qualify or until you're eligible. We talk about this in the consults. We develop a plan. And then you can retain us to help you with your application. So we do review calls, we review all your documents, right? We talk about supporting documents, we talk about how to correctly prepare your application and present a good application. So this is what we do. This is our expertise. We work with a lot of clients to achieve their immigration goals. Again, if you're interested, speak to a lawyer. At the very bottom, you'll see me. You'll see what I focus on: express entry, work permits, including post-graduation work permits, and also I'm developing my background. As a previous decision maker for the government of Canada, as someone who's worked in the United Nations and done a lot of interviews and rendered a lot of decisions, and also who worked at the federal court, I am going to be specializing in developing a lot of litigation. So if you have a rejected application, right, a rejected immigration application, whether it's PR, whether it's misrepresentation, and you'd like to talk about a judicial review, so going to federal court and arguing, getting a judge to have another visa officer take a look at your file again, this is something that I'm very excited to be developing at the firm. And also, we also do reconsideration requests. So, for example, we're dealing with someone who's been accused of misrepresentation, but there's no misrepresentation, right? Or dealing with cases, for example, a PR application was refused because there's not enough evidence on the knock code. This is what we look at to overcome negative refusals. In some cases, we just recommend you reapply. In some cases, we're going to go with a reconsideration. And if that doesn't work in 30 days, or if that does not work at all, make sure that we file an application for judicial review at the federal court. The applications need to be filed if you're inside Canada if the decision is inside Canada within 15 days and outside Canada within 60 days. So there's a time limit. If you have a rejected immigration application, don't hesitate to reach out to discuss how you can make an application for judicial review. All right, so here's a quick overview of our firm, of what we do. We're so happy to help our clients and do these live Q&As. Axel posting again, he says, I'm Nigerian. We together since 2017 and 2016 and 2017 I did a master's in France. Now work as a freelancer. Got married in 2021. She works since 2018 in Algeria. We are apart because of work. I can bring her in France. Yeah. So listen, I think a letter of explanation explaining all this in more detail, providing, for example, a marriage certificate, providing a copy of the master's acceptance, and really demonstrating, that your marriage is genuine and not for immigration purposes would be fantastic for your case. Shang Song says, Hi Cedric, if one uncovers a mistake in travel and residential history from a previously successful application, would it be prudent to declare it in any subsequent application? Right, so I would recommend that the information that from the very first time you make an application for immigration that you check very carefully to make sure that everything is correct, right? To really think about it, look for bank statements, for employment letters, bank stubs, and whatnot. In your case, you've already made a little mistake from a previously successful application. I do believe that it was a best case scenario, and it's best to ask to declare this up front and to explain in a letter of explanation what is going on. So this comes interesting into what type of previous application it was. It also is interesting as to what is the specific question asking for your residential address. But in general, you're going to want to make sure that everything is accurate, and if you want to update any previous information to provide a letter of explanation as to why. In some cases, they might revisit your successful application if there's an impact, right? So if we're talking about, you should have provided, because you were in a country for more than 6 months, you should provide a police certificate, right? So in some cases, it might actually impact your previous application. In any event, I definitely recommend to be upfront, truthful in every immigration application. And if you discover a mistake afterwards, absolutely declare it with a letter of explanation. Um, it's hard to tell with these 3 lines exactly what to do in your case, but again, the general principle: truthful, honest, declare it in your next application, explain why there's this mistake, provide documentation for the mistake, and do keep in mind that it may impact your previous application. It might also impact your current application, but we do have this legal obligation to do it, and this is 100% the way that I recommend to do it, to disclose it. George says, how does IRCC view the use of study loans from Canada-based providers? Loan company gives financial support letters for study permit application, and funds are dispersed directly to LI. So I don't know what you mean by view. Um, I don't know what we mean by view. Let's go to the study plan. Sorry, let's go to study proof of funds. We have it. All right, so get a study permit. Then we're going to go down here to the proof of funds. Again, this is outside Quebec. So you're able to get a proof of student or loan from a bank. So, all right, so this would be a proof of funds, right? So you would attach the loan from the bank, right? You would also attach the statement from the university, your balance, showing that you've paid the balance in full. For the loan, we have the balance in full. And then don't forget that if you're outside Quebec, the amount of funds required per year does not include tuition. You need to have an extra $10,000 cash if you're single to support yourself. So usually what we'll see a lot of clients do is they're going to get a loan from a bank, they're going to pay the tuition, right? And then they're going to get, for example, a GIC for 10 grand, and submit that as proof as well. Talking about bank statements for the past 4 months, this is allowed usually, so include the current month, include the past 4 months, and in some cases they might request more. And if we're dealing with a case where you have a large deposit, you're going to have to provide, we usually recommend to provide a letter of explanation. And in this letter, you're going to explain the reasons for the large deposit, whether it was a gift, right? They allow gifts from family members. Your parents give you 20 grand to come to Canada, but they don't allow loans, right, from other individuals, only from banks. Something to keep in mind. It has to be someone giving you money. It can't be someone loaning you money. So you might have to explain that, get a gift deed to make sure that you have the correct proof of financial support. Oh, there we go. We lost you, George. There you are. All right, go back to the main frame here. George says, but I'm wondering if students' inability to finance their studies themselves is viewed negatively by IRCC. Um, there's no discretion when it comes to proof of funds. You either meet the proof of funds or you don't. They can't say, oh, they got to, like, it's hard to say. Um, if you're able to take this loan from the Canadian bank, pay for your loan, pay for your tuition, provide proof of the studies, and have your $10,000. Your $10,000 is well documented, right? You've earned it through work. You've gotten a gift from your parents. You have a gift deed. I think there's going to be very little reason for them to reject it. Obviously, this is just finance. This is just legal information. I don't know what bank you're dealing with. I don't know how much funds. I don't know your specific situation. So again, this is just legal information. We only provide legal advice. Once we have the proper documents, we speak with you in a consultation and so on. But listen, like I said, it's common for people to take loan from banks to pay for their tuition. I wouldn't. Based on the information you gave me today and on legal information that we have as well, the legal information states that you're allowed to do it. So there we go. So Trevor asks, "Hi Cedric, is it required to submit your language score report with work permit application, occupation, material handler? What are your views?" So when we're dealing with work permits, you generally have to be able to show to the immigration authorities that you can execute, you can do the job that's inside. You can actually do the job of the job offer, right? So you qualify for the job. So this means, you have previously worked in it, or you have experience or education. This is what they're going to be looking at. And it's very interesting because the language score is actually not going to be necessarily a hard and fast rule for every job. So this means what I'm trying to get to is that you can imagine, for example, we're dealing before with the human resource manager, right? We would expect them to have a pretty good understanding of English or French because you're going to be dealing with other individuals by writing, orally, and whatnot, right? So if we come back here quickly, we're still on this page, human resource manager, right? We talk about um, the main duties, and then we talk about the several years of experience. Sometimes you need a designation um, and whatnot. But you'll see here there's no language requirement, right? How do we know what language score we need to get? And here we'll go, Trevor, we'll go to your specific knock that you've asked me about. So here we are, material handlers. Again, please explain super clearly, make it super easy for immigration officers, right? Have the letter of explanation, have the lead title, explain how you meet it. And then here are your main duties. Meet 75% of them. This one starts with May, so you can actually ignore it. But if you do meet this, obviously include it. Again, at least the majority of the main duties should be met. Great. Again, very typical. There's no language requirement, right? So how do you know what language you have to do? So this generally, the general principle is that you have the qualifications, the work experience, um, that's properly supported, reference letters, explanations. It makes sense, right, that you could do this job, and right. So what level of interactions you're going to have with others? What is the language of the workplace? What language do you need to have? And so it's really hard to give you a hard fastball number in terms of what number you need to meet, right? They're going to be looking at your English and the letters that you write. If you have any interactions with RCC, they're going to be looking at your previous experience. If you already worked in the English or French context, these are things they're going to be looking at. You could submit your language score in your work permit application. I would look, again, I'm assuming this is an LMIA. What does the LMIA say in terms of language? Is there a language requirement to the LMIA? What do they talk about your main duties? These are all factors. You can also call your employer and see how they've done it with previous individuals, right? How do they have to submit language scores? I think in general, you're going to want to have a pretty decent, like, I would say an excellent level of English, but you're going to want to have a pretty decent English level. Whether or not you have to provide the language scores depends on the job. Um, Depends on the job. And just taking a quick look here for foreign workers. Yeah, so here we go. If we flip back here to the requirements, right? This essentially summarizes what I was talking about, right? The officer shall not issue a work permit to a foreign national if there are reasonable grounds to believe that the foreign national is unable to perform the work sought, right? So immigration officers should not limit their language assessment solely to the work. However, language statement in the LMIA should be part of the officer's assessment in the applicant's ability. So there we have it. Bang on of what I was talking about. Obviously, take a look at this. So anyways, take a close look at this. You can include it if you have a good language score. Include it, and make sure that before you go through with this, that you meet able to do the work. You're able to perform the work sought. So there we go. There we have it. All right, Trevor. Hi, Moaz. So you ask, hi, Cedric. I applied for the AIPP pilot program, January 2022, but no update yet. How do you see the timeline for AIPP Outlanders? As I've mentioned previously, there's 2.4 million. It was over 2 million pending applications at RCC right now. So the, as it relates to express entry, the minister has stated that they want to get back to 6-month processing for express entry PR applications in the next, for the end of the year. And we can hope that this is going to happen for all the other permanent residency programs and whatnot. Unfortunately, we really don't know how long it's going to take. You No updates yet, no acknowledgement of receipt, no medicals. Right? So if you get anything from IRCC, obviously try to reply to it as quickly as possible to delay processing times. But unfortunately, for a lot of programs, we don't know how long it's going to take. But we really hope that the IRCC is working hard and they're going to reduce the waiting times. Dear says hi. How are you? Same on as well. Hi. Shout out to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Payad says you skipped my question. So yeah, we don't take them in order. I can guarantee you that we take ones that we think are going to be really important for everyone to share legal information about, right? I think I did answer. We don't answer them, and I did skip your question. Let's see here. GC key has been revoked. My representative can't link it to my new login. He's suggesting to reapply. I have the old one as well. I would contact IRCC to advise you as to whether or not you can revive your old GC key account. They usually don't recommend to have two different accounts. So unfortunately, I can't advise you more than that. Contact IRCC, see if you can get your old GC key account. Again, I don't know your representative. I don't know your personal situation. I'm sorry that I can't help you more. Rahul says hello. Spider-Man says hi. I'm Spidey from Bali, an old friend of Mark. Glad to have you on the on my live Q&A. All right, guys. Well, listen, I'm going to take 2 more questions here. Is the draw cutoff would drop down to 380? Cass, at the beginning of the video, I talked about ways to improve your express entry score, right? We're talking about LMIAs, French, transferability skills, better language scores, possibly furthering your education, getting more work experience, and higher knocks, improve it. I do think that 380, even before COVID, it was quite low. So unfortunately, I do think that 380 is too low. This is just based on previous rounds of invitation, right? If we go back to our previous rounds of invitation, we can see that throughout COVID it was very high because of provincial nominee program. If we go back to before COVID, we're still in COVID here, yeah, before COVID, see the federal school of trades, right? 357, right? But no program specified. Here we're talking about at least 470. And we do expect this to stay quite high for the next year or two. So look for ways to improve your CRS score, right? You can do it. Hi, Veer. So your question, you say my son has been nominated through the Ontario Immigration Nomination Program, international student job offer. He already submitted all the requirements and paid for permanent residence application. So here I'm assuming you're talking about your express entry profile, right? So he's created an express entry profile, paid the fees. How many months for approval? So here do you mean how many months for an invitation to apply, or are we talking about how many months? How many months for or how many months until the PR application is actually approved. So right now I still think that it's taking quite a bit of time to approve to review and approve express entry applicants. We can actually take a look here, go back, we go to economic migration, We go to skilled. So assuming he was in Canada because he international student job. 13 months. If you have your invitation to apply and you've submitted it, it's going to be 13 months from then. In some cases, you might qualify for an open work permit. Um, for bridging open work permit in some cases, so you don't want to take a look at that Veer if his status is going to expire for that. All right, let's take a look here. Yes, as that Jim has said, OIMP is not selecting outline applicants. So again, this is assuming that he's inside Canada. All right, Death Trim says, I hope ONP does draws, or else thousands of them will suffer. That is the only way out. Otherwise, we have to rely on C19. It is so frustrating when you need them, they are not there for you. Yeah, I mean, a lot of delays has caused a lot of stress and anxiety for a lot of people, and I'm sure it's not easy to wait. Especially with long delays, you could understand a few weeks, a few months, but when you're dealing with like 6, 8 months, a year in some cases, it's really not easy. So Dutchroom says, if they resume, then remember there will be a lot of candidates lined up because everyone is expecting and wants to get picked by OINP. Sorry, Dutchroom, I know you've been helpful answering a lot of people's questions. I'm just trying to find your question. Sorry, Dutchroom, I can't seem to find your question. I do apologize. Very first live Q&A by myself. I did a few with Mark, so I do apologize. Hopefully, we'll get back to you in the short term. So George, just to follow up on your question, you say, so we talked, George had a previous question about whether or not the bank is going to qualify, the bank loan is going to qualify for this proof of funds. It's an excellent question, and I think it requires a little bit more research. Let's take a quick look. And so I don't know Empower Financing, unfortunately. Generally speaking, we have the proof of funds. You can imagine, for example, you're a foreign national that's outside of Canada right now, and you need to prove your funds. It might be you might get a bank loan from a bank inside your country of nationality. So I think we'd have to look closer to see what the requirements are for when we talk about what is a financial institution or a student loan provider as opposed to a bank, and would it qualify for proof of funds. Fortunately, this time I actually don't know the answer to a question, and I'd probably have to take a quick peek at it. But excellent question. You definitely have the good reflexes to ask these questions and to look into it, yourself. But you definitely want to look into the immigration regulations or rules to see what we talk about, what is defined as a bank, or you might also look into the ministerial directives or program policies, the operational guides to see what do they qualify as a bank. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to your question, but great reflex to have to look at that. All right, let's take one. So let's take one final question here, and it's from Suraj. He says, I am a PR, was on EI, now drive for Uber Canada. Uber, can I sponsor my wife? What to show instead of employer letter? So when we talk about employer spousal sponsorships, you're going to have to be eligible to sponsor. Um, so there's going to be eligibility to sponsor. If you just give me a moment to pull this up. So here we go. This is the program guide. Sponsor your spouse, common law partner, conjugal partner, and this talks about all the different things you need to check off from before you apply all the way to the very end to submitting your application. So what we definitely want to look at is whether or not you are eligible to sponsor. So 18 years of age, Canadian citizen, or you're living in Canada as a PR. Oh, all right. And then we keep going down. Who can you sponsor? So you want to sponsor your spouse. So far, so good. But here we go. Able to prove that you're not receiving social assistance for any reasons other than disability. So right now you cannot be receiving EI. And you may not be able to sponsor if you're in one of these situations, right? So you did not pay back any, you previously sponsored someone, didn't pay it back, you default on a loan, you don't have a court order alimony or child support, you're not bankrupt, you weren't convicted of a crime, here are the crimes that make you ineligible, um, various other requirements to look at. So take a good look at this guide. And if we continue down, we're going to have income requirements. So here we go. Here talks about income. So you don't, there's no low income cutoff for a spouse or partner, right? But you have, so in some situations you do have to have the LICO requirement, but in most cases there isn't. But you have to be able to, I don't see it here, I might miss it, but you need to be able to prove that they're going to be able to support themselves inside of Canada. So there's no income requirement, but how do you demonstrate that you're able to support your partner when they come to Canada? You work for Uber in this case, which to show instead of employment letter, you can have you can get your tax documents, any pay stubs, employment history with Uber, um, to show that you have the minimum, that you have income to be able to support your spouse if they were to come to Canada. So take a close look at the guide, a lot of information there. Take a look at the income requirements and how you can support it. And that is going to get you started for your spousal. So he says, I am driving for Uber now. Yeah, so look to see if you can get, I'm not super familiar with how they pay, but I imagine they provide you with some pay stubs or some form of employment and whatnot. So take a closer look at that. And take a closer look at the guide to see how you can do that. But anyways, sorry, not answering the question directly. It's hard when we don't have all the details, all the documents, and it's just me answering questions. But take a look at the program guide. It's a great start to see how you can prove whether or not you're allowed to sponsor and how you can provide documents. So at this time, I just want to thank you all so much for joining me in this first live Q&A. We're going to have a second one at the same time, so 4 a.m. Toronto time, 9 a.m. London, England time. And the idea is really, if you're abroad, if you're outside Canada, this is a great opportunity to join me for podcasts, to join me for live Q&A, and to be able to ask questions. So it's great timing for those in Africa, those in Asia. It provides more flexibility. We also have Mark is going to be doing his podcast at the usual time on Wednesdays. So it's 11 a.m. Mountain time, so Calgary time. And Mark and Alicia also do one at the same time on Thursday. So Alicia joins Mark. They do a double team live Q&A, and mine is way earlier. They're currently sleeping right now. It's 3 a.m. right now in Calgary. So is it 3 a.m.? It's pretty early in Calgary. So all to say, my Q&As are really to target people who are abroad and want to come to Canada. My consults, right? I'm currently teleworking abroad right now, so my consults are also opened up for much better time zones if you're abroad. I'm happy to help you. Happy to talk more about your case. Just very briefly, in the here on our website, firm health immigration law, the very top right, you can speak to a lawyer, and then you can speak with me. And what we do in the consults is we talk about your immigration plan. Why do you want to come to Canada? What is the best option? Is spousal the best? Express entry? Should I actually go to judicial review for this PR application that was rejected, or should I do a new application? Right? I had a misrepresentation. What do I do? Right? So we talk about this in detail. We have the forms. It's more of a conversation, and then we provide you with a way forward. And then we're more than happy to work with you to prepare your application correctly, to make sure you have supporting documents, and to submit your application for you. So we have experience in doing this in myself. A little bit more about me. You can read more about me here when you go our team, and you scroll down to Cedric. In short, I used to be a decision maker for the government of Canada. I previously worked for the United Nations as well. I also was a law clerk at the federal court where I helped judges with legal research and provided advice on current cases. So experience in the courts, experience as a decision maker, experience international experience. And as you can see here, here's where I'm teleworking from right now. I do travel to Canada quite a bit and do travel outside quite a bit as well, which means that we have fantastic times to speak with me, much more flexibility to speak with me if you'd like to. So that's it for today. Again, I'm going to be taking 5 questions from the comments. If you miss this, go ahead and post in the comments below. The next podcast, live Q&A, we're going to open with these 5 questions. And if you want to speak to me in the meanwhile, you know where to find me. Thank you so much.